The Minister for Education.
Thank you, sir. The other day I enjoyed the opportunity to reflect on some of the changes that the government has instituted in the last couple of years to provide increased support for students with disability in South Australia as part of our inclusive education support program. And indeed, sir, in doing so, I noted that this last year the Marshall Liberal government had an expenditure of $305 million for special education options, supporting students with disability in our South Australian public schools. So that represented an increase of 26% since 2018, from $241 million to $305 million. I start with this figure, sir, because it is an indication of the dramatic financial terms support that the Marshall Liberal government has demonstrated for supporting students with disability. And there are very good reasons for this, which are straightforward in their way. But fundamentally, our ambition for education in South Australia is for every child, whatever classroom or kindy they are in, whatever town or suburb or city, indeed, across this great state they are in, to be supported to fulfil their potential, to be given the opportunity for a year's growth in their educational understanding every year for every year that they're in school. And that means that every student is valuable and precious. Every single one of their futures is precious, and we want to support those children to be their best selves, to live their best lives, to live successful lives, whatever success means for any individual child. That means that 21,115.7 students were recognised in Term 3 last year as receiving support through whether it be the Inclusive Education Support Program or other disability funding measures, a 10.5% increase in the number of students receiving that support the previous year. And not necessarily relying on a diagnosis, but instead focusing, sir, on their functional needs. Now, that's in relation to particularly, I was talking about the other day, the Inclusive Education Support Program, and the level of support that mainstream schools in particular might be able to provide for a student who needs that extra support. And as at Term 1 this year, 82.6% of our students with disability attend mainstream schools. Of course, today I'd like to spend a little bit more time talking about the extra support we're providing for the 17.4% who attend what is known as a special option. For that means 7.4% of those are in a special class, 4.6% in a disability unit and 5.4% in a special school. To help people get their head around what those numbers mean, we're talking about 1,383 students in a special class. These are classes that are usually part of a mainstream school. Sometimes you may even have students who go back and forth between a special class and mainstream settings. These are students for whom the curriculum is adapted as necessary, but there is a certain level of integration with the rest of the school. We have 872 students in disability units and 1,022 students in special schools. Now, special schools are standalone schools. Most of them are co-located or next door to a mainstream school site. The disability units provide a similar level of extra support as a special school would, but they form a unique unit and a distinct unit within a school. Wherever possible, there is an opportunity with the disability unit and students there to interact with students in the mainstream setting. But the unit itself is often separate, and often for very good reasons, often for the safety of students. Sometimes these are students who might be runners. Sometimes these are students with very particular social or physical needs. So there is a level of extra care that is taken there. So in relation to supporting these students, the commitment that this government has, and it's a commitment that comes not only from our own intent but also from what we have signed up to in the National School Funding Reform Agreement, is that every student in our schools will be supported financially by this government to meet their needs. So from the government's point of view, the particular job we have is to ensure that a student is able to be placed in the setting that best suits their educational needs, where their educational future means that they will be stretched to fulfil their educational potential, and not just a sense that we will put them somewhere where they will be looked after. They will be looked after, sir, and their well-being is a priority, but we also want to stretch them to fulfil their potential. So finding the placement that is most appropriate is very important. Finding the right placement, whether it is in a mainstream setting with a certain element of support through the curriculum, or a mainstream setting with extra support wrapped around, or in a special class or a unit or a special school. So the government's recent initiatives are providing additional special options places to meet the needs of those students. These include, sir, 180 places at 11 secondary schools as part of the Year 7 to High School project next year. So that's 180 places. There's millions of dollars extra we have put into the budget to support extra units to be created next year in our high schools with the Year 7s coming in. In addition to that, sir, next year we will also see 104 special options placements at each of the 2 new schools in Angle Vale and Aldinga, at Aldinga Bay Indy College and at Riverbanks College in Angle Vale, 104 special options placements. And in addition to that, there is an additional special class included in the design of the new Whyalla Secondary College in 2022, which will bring the total of special class places in Whyalla to 48 in that secondary school. In response further to demand of eligible students seeking junior primary or primary school placements, 10 schools established new special options classes at the beginning of this year, resulting in a further 112 places in those primary and junior primary years. Those places have been created at the Ingle Farm East Primary School, the South Downs Primary School, the Balaclava Primary School, Lake Windermere Primary School, the Riverdale Primary School, at Hendon Primary School, at Highbury Primary School in my own electorate, and shared with the member for Newland, of course. The boundary between Morialta and Newland runs through the schools, so we share that one with great joy. The Ridgehaven Primary School, the Playford Primary School and the Tanunda Primary School. All of those schools at the beginning of this year supported extra special classes or special options to support those primary students who needed that level of support. Sir, departmental officers are currently undertaking forecasting processes to identify any further potential required options for 2022. The Department of Education, and I cannot say enough what a significant body of this work this has been and what an important body of work it has been, has cleared the waiting list of children who were assessed before the end of the 2020 school year as eligible for a special option starting junior primary in 2021. These are very young children assessed as needing a special option whose parents wanted them to be in a special option, not in a mainstream class. For the first time in living memory, and certainly the first time since records have been collected, the department has been able to find a place for those junior primary students, with one exception of a student in a regional area where the local option was preferred to the closest available special option. And I'll talk briefly in a moment about what a significant role that is, but it's important to note that whether in a mainstream or a special setting, the department will continue to provide support to students with a disability embarking on their education. There's no financial benefit to the department from having a child be in the mainstream setting rather than in that special option, a class or a disability unit or a special school. We will provide that extra support to the mainstream setting to support that student. But ideally, you find the place that best meets the educational needs of that child. So in 2021, to the beginning of this year, sir, as I said, there was only one student in junior primary years who was unable to be placed in exactly the right place for their needs and instead was in a mainstream setting with extra supports. There were 7 in the primary years and 29 in the secondary years. And 37, we would ideally like it to have been none, sir. But 37 is an extraordinary outcome compared to previous years. The previous 1 year, for example, there were 59 unable to be placed in junior primary settings, 18 in primary and 11 secondary. So a total of 88 students. And that too, sir, was too many. These students, to be clear, continue to get that extra support that is needed to support their education in a mainstream setting. But, sir, it is still an improvement on 2018, when there were indeed, in 2018, 262 placed out of 365 eligible in secondary, 209 placed out of 260 eligible in primary, and 318 placed out of 424 eligible in junior primary. Or if you go back further to 2016, which is the first year we have the records, 203 placed out of 315 eligible in secondary, 202 placed out of 290 eligible in primary, and 300 out of 381 eligible in junior primary. So in 2016, we see 282 students unplaced in the public system. 2018, 260 students unplaced in the public system. Last year, 37. Now, there's always more to do, and we will do that work, but we are committed to the funding, we are committed to supporting these students. Those students who can't get the placement exactly according to their needs will get the support that they need in a mainstream setting, and sir, we will continue to do better. But I just want to congratulate all of the public servants, all of the teachers and the principals, all of the educators who have worked so hard to work for these children and get this good outcome.